My name's Harry, and 2 years ago, I got dumped in the most humiliating way possible. Back then, I was 26, working as a mechanic in a small town outside Denver. It wasn't glamorous, but I was proud of what I did. I liked fixing things, and I was good at it. My ex-girlfriend, Sarah, didn't think so. She was ambitious, or at least that's what she told everyone. She worked in marketing, wore sleek suits, and talked about scaling and networking like they were magic words. We'd been dating for almost 3 years when she sat me down one night at my apartment and told me I lacked ambition. I remember that exact phrase because it burned into my brain like acid. She said she couldn't build a future with someone who was content with mediocrity. What she really meant was that I wasn't earning 6 figures or driving a Tesla. She left me that night, and a month later, she was dating her boss, some guy named Alex, who ran a startup in the city. I was crushed, but I didn't beg. I just let her go. For a while, I hated myself for not being enough, but eventually, that feeling turned into something else: motivation. I stopped trying to be who she wanted and focused on what I wanted, to build something real. I had an idea, one that had been sitting in my head for months, about creating a small business that offered mobile auto repair. Instead of customers coming to me, I'd go to them. At first, it sounded impossible, but I started saving every spare dollar, working late shifts, and learning everything about running a business. I found an old van on Craigslist, spent nights fixing it up, and painted my new company name on the side. On the Go Repairs. The first few months were rough. I barely got calls, and I almost quit twice. But then, word started spreading. People liked the convenience, and soon enough, I was booked out weeks in advance. I hired one guy, then another, and within a year, I had a small fleet. We weren't just repairing cars anymore. We were installing custom systems, doing roadside rescues, even offering maintenance contracts for local delivery companies. It felt surreal, me, the guy who supposedly lacked ambition, running a growing company with 5 employees. I wasn't rich, not yet, but I was doing something I loved and building it from the ground up. Then one day, out of nowhere, I got an email that made me freeze. It was from Sarah. She'd written, "Hi Harry, it's been a while. I saw your company online and was really impressed. I'd love to catch up sometime. Maybe grab coffee?" I didn't respond right away. My first instinct was anger. The last time I'd seen her, she was laughing in a photo on Instagram, sitting next to that smug startup guy Alex. I remembered how small she made me feel, how she talked about me like I was a failure before I even had a chance to start. But curiosity got the better of me. I told myself I'd meet her, not because I wanted her back, but because I wanted to see what she wanted. We met at a cafe downtown. She looked the same, perfect hair, expensive perfume, but there was something different in her eyes, something tired. She smiled too wide when she saw me and said I looked great. She told me about how things with Alex hadn't worked out, that his company had folded, and that she'd been laid off recently. She said she was exploring new opportunities. I nodded politely, sipping my coffee, not giving her anything. Then she asked what I was doing these days. I told her about the business. She lit up instantly, like she'd just spotted a winning lottery ticket. "That's amazing, Harry," she said, her tone dripping with enthusiasm. "I actually have a lot of marketing experience. If you ever need help expanding or managing your brand, I'd love to be involved." My stomach twisted, but I kept my face calm. She was asking me for a job, me, the man she dumped for being unambitious. I couldn't decide whether to laugh or feel insulted. She didn't seem to realize how ridiculous it sounded. Instead, she kept talking about how we made a great team once and how It could be fun to work together again. I told her I'd think about it, but the truth was, I already knew what I'd do. I just needed time to decide how I wanted to play it. Because part of me wanted revenge, not the screaming, petty kind, but the quiet, satisfying kind. The kind that doesn't need words to make its point. After that coffee meeting, Sarah started messaging me constantly. At first, it was about the job, but soon her messages became more personal. She'd say things like, "I miss how driven you were," or "I'm really proud of what you've done." I knew what was happening. She was trying to slide back into my life, just like that. I didn't block her. Not yet. Instead, I let her talk. I wanted to understand why she was really reaching out. I learned she was struggling. After her boyfriend's company went under, she tried to find another job in marketing but kept hitting walls. The industry had changed, and apparently, her reputation wasn't the best. She jumped from job to job, chasing titles and salaries, but never lasting long. Now she was desperate. Meanwhile, my company was booming. We just landed a big contract with a regional delivery company. I'd hired a manager to help with logistics and was planning to open a second location. Every day, I felt more in control of my life. And yet, when I saw Sarah's name pop up on my phone, I couldn't help but feel that sting of the past, the version of me she threw away. She eventually asked outright if I was hiring. She even sent me her resume. I looked at it out of curiosity, and something caught my attention. She'd listed one of her last employers as a company I knew, a marketing agency that had gone bankrupt after being accused of shady practices. She'd left that part out, of course, but it told me everything I needed to know. Still, I didn't reject her right away. I told her to come by the office for an interview. I wanted her to see what she'd walked away from. When she arrived, I watched her step into the shop like she was walking into a memory. She looked around, taking in the clean bays, the employees in uniforms with my company's logo, the front desk where my new assistant greeted her. I could see the flicker of shock in her face when she realized this wasn't just a mechanic's garage. It was a legitimate operation. I greeted her like any other applicant, keeping my tone professional. She smiled nervously and started talking about her experience, throwing around marketing buzzwords like she was on autopilot. But I wasn't listening to the words. I was watching her eyes. There was this moment when she looked at me, really looked, and I saw regret flicker across her face. When she finished her little pitch, she smiled hopefully and said, "So, do you think I'd be a good fit?" I leaned back, pretending to think. I could have humiliated her right then, told her exactly what I thought of her ambition. But instead, I played along. I told her I'd consider it, and that I'd call her after reviewing all the candidates. She seemed relieved, almost giddy, and left with a big smile. As soon as she was gone, I made a decision. I wasn't going to hire her, but I also wasn't going to reject her outright. I was going to make her wait. I wanted her to realize just how far she'd fallen and what she had thrown away. For the next few weeks, I ignored her messages selectively. I answered politely when necessary, but didn't show urgency or interest. She started reaching out more frequently, sometimes sending long messages about her struggles, her attempts to land jobs, even subtle hints that she still cared about me. Every message stung, a mix of nostalgia and vindication. I could see how desperate she was becoming. Then one afternoon, Sarah showed up at my shop unannounced. She claimed she had a question about a potential marketing strategy, but her tone betrayed her nervousness. She lingered, watching the employees, the busy vans leaving the shop, the way people respected the system I had built. I could see the wheels turning in her head, the realization dawning that this wasn't just a small mechanic's garage. This was a business that worked, and she had no place in it yet. I invited her in, offered her coffee, and we sat down in my office. I asked her straightforwardly what she wanted. She admitted that she needed a job, that she didn't have much time to waste, and that she respected what I had built. But the way she said it, the humility mixed with desperation, it was almost unbearable to watch. I decided to give her a task, something small yet telling. A trial, if you will. I gave her a week to come up with a social media marketing plan for one of our delivery contracts. The catch was, I didn't give her all the details, only enough to see if she could work independently and think critically. She left excited, practically skipping, convinced she had a chance to impress me. That night, I stared at my office wall, thinking about how much power had shifted. 2 years ago, she had looked down on me, judged my ambition, walked out of my life thinking she was better. Now, the tables were turning. I knew that her week of planning would reveal a lot, not just about her abilities, but about her character, about whether she truly deserved a spot in my company. And I couldn't wait to see the outcome. The week Sarah spent working on the marketing plan felt like a game of chess in my mind. Every time I checked my emails, I imagined her sitting at her apartment, typing furiously, trying to prove herself. I had purposely given her limited information, knowing it would reveal her true competence, or lack thereof. By the end of the week, she sent me her plan, a neatly formatted PDF full of jargon and buzzwords, ideas she'd clearly copied from online articles, sprinkled with vague metrics that sounded impressive but meant very little. I read through it carefully, line by line, noting every flaw and inconsistency. Her proposals were generic, uninspired, and half-baked. She hadn't done the research I expected, hadn't thought critically about how our business actually ran. But she had confidence, more than she had back when we were dating. That confidence, misguided though it was, almost made me admire her audacity. I called her in, ostensibly to give feedback. She arrived, radiating excitement and optimism, expecting praise. I smiled politely, complimented her layout and effort, then started asking detailed questions about her strategy. Almost immediately she struggled. Numbers didn't add up, target demographics were off, and her contingency plans were non-existent. I could see her face fall as the questions grew sharper, more pointed. I leaned back and told her bluntly that while I appreciated the effort, the plan wasn't usable, and that I wasn't sure she had the skills necessary for the position. Her eyes widened with panic, and for a moment, I thought she might argue, but she didn't. She stayed quiet, biting her lip, realizing that the easy path she had imagined was gone. Watching her stumble, I felt a strange mixture of vindication and guilt. This wasn't cruelty, it was a lesson. A lesson she had refused to learn when she walked away from me. Over the next few days, I continued my usual work, letting her anxiety simmer. I knew she would reach out again, and she did. Every message grew increasingly desperate, more transparent, revealing that her confidence had been fragile all along. She began asking for advice, for guidance, even for mentorship. That was when I made a bold decision. I sent her a message inviting her to shadow me for a day, to see how the business really operated. I didn't tell her it would be a test of endurance, of attention to detail, of patience. The day arrived, and she showed up impeccably dressed, carrying a notebook and laptop. At first, she watched the team move vehicles, inspect engines, handle customer calls. Then I handed her a task, a complicated logistical problem involving 3 vans, multiple jobs, and a last-minute cancellation. She tried to organize it, typing frantically into spreadsheets, but soon she was visibly flustered. Numbers clashed, deadlines overlapped, and she became increasingly frustrated. By the time lunch rolled around, she was exhausted, sweating, apologizing constantly for mistakes she didn't even know she was making. I observed silently, noting every reaction, every misstep, every assumption she got wrong. Afterward, I took her aside and asked her what she thought. She admitted that she hadn't realized how much work went into running a small business, that it was more complex than she had imagined, and that she understood why I had succeeded where she had struggled. That moment was the turning point. She finally realized that ambition without substance, without grit and consistency, didn't mean much. Over the next few weeks, Sarah sent emails offering to revise her plan, asking for smaller tasks, trying desperately to prove herself. But I held firm. I didn't want to reward desperation. I wanted her to understand the difference between ambition and true drive. She began to soften, humbling herself in ways she never had before. Each email, each message was a small admission. She had misjudged me, underestimated me, and now she had to earn her place, if she ever could. And all the while, I watched from a distance, knowing that the power dynamics had shifted completely. She had come to me thinking she had leverage, thinking I would welcome her back because of nostalgia or old feelings. Instead, she had walked into my world blind, unprepared, and had been forced to confront the reality of what I had built. The week she finally admitted that she needed guidance, that she hadn't been ready before, was the week I realized I had the ultimate advantage. Not money, not position, but the knowledge that she had come to me humbled and desperate. And that knowledge gave me a satisfaction I hadn't expected, a quiet triumph over the person who once said I lacked ambition. The weeks that followed felt like a slow burn. Sarah continued to check in, offering to redo tasks, asking questions about processes, trying to show initiative. I let her flounder a little longer, guiding her subtly but never giving her the easy path. I could see the shift in her demeanor. Gone was the self-assured, superior attitude from 2 years ago. In its place was a mixture of humility, frustration, and an almost desperate desire to prove she was worthy. It was both satisfying and unsettling, watching someone who once discarded me for my lack of ambition, now struggling to measure up. Then came the moment that changed everything. A major client called in a crisis, 3 vans broken down mid-route, and a tight deadline looming. I couldn't handle it alone, and the team was stretched thin. I turned to Sarah. She froze, panic flashing across her face, but I didn't let her retreat. I handed her a clipboard with instructions, told her to coordinate the drivers, handle client communications, and track repairs. No shortcuts. She hesitated, then nodded, forcing herself to act. What followed was chaotic. She missed a call, misdirected a driver, and nearly created a domino effect that would have delayed everything. I intervened sparingly, letting her correct herself, seeing how she handled pressure. Each mistake was a lesson. Each small success was a recognition of growth. By the end of the day, she was exhausted, bruised mentally if not physically, but she had pulled it off. Not perfectly, but enough to keep the client satisfied. I watched her leave that night, slumped in the passenger seat of her car, and I knew she had finally glimpsed the difference between appearance and reality. Sarah didn't contact me the next day. I assumed she was reflecting on what had happened, recalibrating her expectations. Then came a message I hadn't anticipated. I don't want this to sound desperate, but I see now what I underestimated. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to prove I belong. That message was both a victory and a dilemma. Part of me wanted to tell her no, to let her struggle a bit longer to learn humility. But another part realized that if I truly wanted to maintain integrity, I had to test her in the real world beyond staged assignments. I decided to give her one last chance, a real project that would determine if she could earn her place or fade away. I handed her a complex account, a fleet maintenance contract for a local courier service with tight timelines, multiple clients, and high expectations. She had 2 weeks. I didn't offer help unless she asked, and even then, I offered guidance in riddles, forcing her to think critically and independently. Those 2 weeks were intense. I monitored her work, the emails, the logistics, the client interactions. She struggled, yes, but she improved visibly day by day. I could see her learning how to manage not just tasks but people, how to prioritize, how to adapt when things went wrong. It was gratifying, witnessing this transformation, but also revealing. Sarah was starting to understand that ambition without follow-through was worthless, that success was measured by effort and consistency, not charm or confidence. On the final day, she presented the project results. Everything was in order, clients satisfied, drivers coordinated, problems solved. She stood there, nervously waiting for judgment, and I told her the truth. "You've done well, Sarah. Not because of who you think you are, but because you've learned. You've seen what it takes to build something real. That's what ambition really is." Her relief was palpable, and in that moment, I realized something profound. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about validation, both for her and for me. She had underestimated me once, and the universe had corrected that mistake. But more importantly, she had finally earned respect, not just from me, but for herself. The power dynamic had fully shifted. 2 years ago, she left me thinking she was superior, that she had the upper hand in life and relationships. Now, she understood what real ambition looked like, what real work entailed, and where she had gone wrong. And I didn't need to say it out loud. The day I decided to make the final call arrived. Sarah had completed the project, proven herself capable in ways she hadn't before, and I could see the transformation in her demeanor. She was no longer the smug, self-assured woman who had dumped me for lacking ambition. She was humbled, aware of the hard work, strategy, and patience required to build something lasting. I called her into my office and sat across from her, letting the silence stretch long enough for her to feel the weight of it. I told her that she had done well, that she had proven she could handle responsibility, and that she could join the team, but only if she truly committed, without any sense of entitlement or nostalgia. Her eyes glistened with a mix of relief and awe, but I could also see a flash of gratitude that wasn't there 2 years ago. This wasn't a second chance at a romantic relationship. It was a chance to earn respect, to show she had learned from her mistakes. She accepted immediately, promising to dedicate herself fully to the company. Over the next few months, Sarah worked harder than I had expected. She immersed herself in every detail, asked questions, listened, and adapted. I watched her evolve from someone who relied on charm and luck into a competent, capable professional. And all the while, I felt a quiet satisfaction, not revenge in the petty sense, but the triumph of validation. I had built something she had dismissed, and she had come back, humbled and willing to learn. The past had been corrected, and I had remained true to myself. Eventually, our interactions normalized. She became a valuable member of the team, contributing in ways that actually mattered. But the power dynamic had shifted permanently. I was the one who had the company, the respect of the employees, the stability she lacked, and she knew it. The final irony struck me one evening when she came to my office, slightly embarrassed, and said, "I guess I owe you for that coffee 2 years ago." I smiled without a hint of bitterness. "You could say that," I replied. It wasn't a statement of superiority. It was a quiet acknowledgement that life had its ways of teaching lessons, and sometimes the humblest ones learn the most. Sarah had learned hers, and I had proven mine, not to her, but to myself. I wasn't someone who lacked ambition. I had built, grown, and succeeded on my own terms. And in doing so, I had finally closed that chapter of my life with dignity, power, and satisfaction.